Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our YouTube channel for Cinema Pursuit Podcast. This following is our first episode. We don't have video for the first episode, but currently I'm literally sitting here editing episode 2, Arrival, and that will have video to some extent. We're excited for that. I hope you enjoy the first episode, and I'll lead right into Django Unchained. Enjoy. All right. Welcome to Cinema Pursuit. My name's Vikash Patel, and my co-host is
Zach. I am here, and I am ready to get going, man. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I am excited too, man. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, it really has. Vikash and I, we have been friends since middle school, and
yeah, since like 2010. So let's just say a solid 13 years.
Jeez, yeah.
And going.
I know, and it's still going. And one thing that's always been really common discussion between us has been movies. We love movies. Vikash.
Common discussion. That's all we talk about is movies.
I'll give Vikash credit. Vikash is the one who got me into movies. You know, I've watched, I wasn't like a Puritan. Like I watched movies as a kid, but to really understand and love the art form, Vikash here, when I was in high school really got me into it. I remember he would just give me, he would just be like, hey man, if you don't watch this, I'm going to spoil it for you. And I'd be like, okay, I'll watch it. I remember this man was trying to play, Inception. Like he was playing like the end of Inception in class one time. And he was like,
wait, I was?
Yeah, because you said,
I was?
Yeah, you said, hey, you said you're not going to watch this, so I'm just starting to play. It was like the part where the dream is collapsing with the snowfall or the avalanche.
Oh, I'm in
Yeah, and you were playing that. You're like, oh, you're not going to watch this, right? And I was like,
I don't remember ever doing that.
I did, and I said,
I
said, okay, I'll watch it. Turn it off, and you're like, okay, and I turned it off, and then I watched an amazing movie.
That's a W. That's a W. That's success.
Anyways, Vikash, you want to talk a little bit about what this podcast is about?
So this podcast is really just a culmination of me and Zach always talking about movies that we love, and me always messaging him on Facebook about these things. And we just wanted to have a platform to talk about the movies that we love, this enduring art that we have within our lives that we always think about. And we know that the conversations can be relative and people can come to this after watching a movie and hear some good thoughts and maybe have a little fun listening to us.
Really, we want to engage with the art form we love in a deeper way. And this is not only a good way to share that with others who may be interested, but also kind of keeps our feet to the fire, where we're going to discuss films with each other multiple times a month. Yeah. And we're going to watch these films, a lot of them that we've already seen before and love. And the big part about this podcast is we're not here to, make a mockery of any films. We're not here to, talk about, dirt, industry stuff. Like, we're here to talk about what we love, which is cinema.
It's not about the drama. It's about love.
Yeah.
It is definitely just all about the love. I think with anything that you love, you will always look past maybe some issues that it has with it and always try to find what good there exists within it rather than always looking at the negative. It's something we should have in our lives just in general towards each other. So the movie that we're starting with is Django Unchained. Also, just a proper warning, every single podcast that we have will always be spoiler-filled from the jump. And if you don't leave right now, it's going to get spoiled. Leonardo DiCaprio dies at the end of this movie in a glorious way, so we'll get that out of the way.
Yeah, we're going to do our best not to spoil other movies. I know I did just talk a little bit about Inception,
okay,
but
that's true.
we are going to do our best not to spoil movies. I will say, if we do bring up, say, other Tarantino movies in this podcast, we're going to do our best not to say anything, even if it's an older movie. We're going to do our best not to say anything. Now, there's certain things you can't avoid. It's going to be hard to not, talk about very traditional movie twists, like Vader being Luke's father, like stuff like that. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Wait. What? Are you serious?
But
you don't get off this podcast. It's disrespectful.
But you know what I'm saying. So basically, anyways,
yeah, I know.
That's the only warning we got. Don't
Okay.
Listen to if you haven't seen this movie, go do something else. Don't listen to us. But if you have seen this movie, stick around. We're gonna have some good discussion about it. So, Vikash, why is this our first movie?
This movie is pretty much from the peak time of finding our love of cinema, meaning in 2012 we were juniors in high school, and this movie came out, 2012 Christmas, and I remember this as being just one of the most vivid experiences I've ever had in a movie theater my entire life. It was, my first Tarantino in the theater, and besides that, just artistically incredibly inspirational movie.
Yeah, how was it inspirational?
Just on every single end, you know that I love action movies. Action movies will always be my bread and butter. And this movie points out especially watching it now, it just points out some of the greatest things I've seen in the last, still 10 years, 11 years since this movie's come out. Let me run a quick summary for the movie then. So this movie is just, 2 hours, 45 minutes. It should have just been a Rick Ross video, but we're not going to talk about that. I love that. But really though, the movie takes place at the cusp of the Civil War in the U.S. South, and there's a German bounty hunter, a dentist turned bounty hunter, with a glorious mustache and beard that frees and befriends a slave, our, titled character Django, and they become partners as bounty hunters, and soon they set off to find and free Broomhilda, the amazing wife of Django, from the terrible human, fantastically played by Leonardo DiCaprio, Calvin Candy. There's a lot of blood, a lot of cursing, and it's honestly one of the best pieces of revisionist history ever put to film. That's Django Unchained.
Well, let me ask you this before we dig deeper. So this movie came out in 2012 and late 2012. I probably either saw it December of 2012 or January 2013. It was very late in the year. What was that year like for you? What were you doing?
That year, I broke my ankle. It was junior year, so we were finally getting back into film class. We kind of had a break sophomore year because we didn't have that class. We had graphics instead, and it's fun, whatever. We're not going to talk about that, but we finally got back into film, and I was just really inspired. This was the same era of this came out. Sidney Lumet died at this time. I vividly remember that happening, and just going back and watching his movies. But this was definitely the movie. This and The Dark Knight Rises for 2012 of being important movies that I saw in the theater. Skyfall too. Skyfall was amazing. Looper was amazing.
It was a good action year.
I could go on.
The reason I ask you that, and I just want to bring up that I feel like another reason why we picked Django is that 2012 is a real pivotal movie year, I'd say, for both of us. I would say that that's the year where we really dived into film in a new way. And this movie is representative of that dive into loving film.
So I can say for a fact that I started watching about 50 new movies a year in 2012, meaning every year I would watch almost a new movie a week that was released in that year.
That's not talking about rewatches, right?
No, that's not counting rewatches. So this is before Letterboxd. We love Letterboxd. If this podcast comes out and Letterboxd is listening, please sponsor us because we love you.
This is IMDb
and we're all
times.
about positivity. Yes. Yes, it is. Please, Letterboxd. Please.
I only switched to Letterboxd 2020. I had probably 500 movies logged on IMDb.
But Letterboxd is amazing, and I think I have 13 or 1600 movies blocked all together, and I'm logging more every single day that I watch a movie. I love it. But on to this movie. So first thoughts about this movie, I want to talk about some personal stories that I have of seeing this movie, because this was 2012. It was Christmas Day. I remember it as clear as day. It was Christmas Day, and I was excited because I'm Indian American, and as a Hindu, it's not that we don't celebrate Christmas. I do believe in Jesus, even though I'm a Hindu. Whatever, that's a whole other thing. But we don't really I don't have a Christmas tree in my house till literally this year. I'm going to set it up when I go home today. But we don't do gifts, whatever. So, but we do love watching movies in my house, and it came out Christmas Day, and I took my brother. It was me and my brother. My brother's about a year older than me. We went to go see the movie in the theater, a packed theater on Christmas, and I had a African American woman sitting right next to me, and very diverse group of people, and you could just feel in the theater that everyone was at the right pace. Like everyone was engorged into this movie. We're being encapsulated. This is an experience rather than whatever. Like just nowadays, it just feels different when I go to a movie theater. It doesn't feel like people are there for the movie. They're there for an experience, which it is an experience, but like they're pulling out their phones and doing this and that. You're not respecting what movie theaters are. But that year, that time, like I'm talking about, like people were yelling in the theater when it gets to the point where where Django is hanging upside down, and this man literally puts the camera between his legs and is shooting up towards Sam Jackson. This lady was like, "Oh no, not Jamie's dick!" I was like, "Okay, this is amazing," and I just really love that experience. Me and my brother were cracking up, having such a great time watching this movie.
For me, I remember watching it. It was kind of a weird group. So I remember I watched it at my dad's house, and
Bro, you did not watch this with your dad.
I did. I watched it with my dad and my cousin.
Whoa.
My cousin was there too.
Oh wait, actually, I watched this movie with my dad. I
And-
did watch this movie with my dad.
You know, and what was funny is I can't remember how I got it, and I'm not, endorsing this, but I remember it was a screener because what happened is a name would keep popping up.
Oh, are you?
You know,
Are you in the media?
It could have been Ellen's.
Are you
right?
are you a
It
guild
might have been
member?
Ellen's screener. I don't know. I remember she had a bunch of screeners linked at one point. But it
yeah.
was a screener because it kept popping that up.
Ellen DeGeneres?
Yeah. But anyways, what I remember is that, and that was like, it was crazy to me, like to have a movie like that was like in theaters, like it never happened before. It was weird. I don't even remember how I got it. But what was really cool is that all these people who don't usually go to the movies much sat down and watched this movie with me and were just engaged. Like they were into it.
that.
And there again, people who don't
love
really
that.
go to the movies was watching it with me, and they were just talking about how amazing the actors were, every scene was. And I remember specifically after the Leo scene at the table, we paused it and we saw there was like 30 or 45 minutes left, maybe 40.
Oh, yeah,
and we
yeah.
were just like, holy crap, this has been an amazing movie and there's more.
And it keeps going and it keeps going.
And I remember that
It's awesome.
in that feeling of not knowing where the movie's going to go next, seeing so much great stuff and just knowing there's more left. It was a really memorable experience to watch it with that group of people and to enjoy it like that.
Hey, film brings people together. No matter who they are, what background, film will always bring people together. And for me, no, it's funny that you bring up the dinner scene. We're gonna talk about it later, but the dinner scene itself is pretty famous because Leo actually broke his hand on a piece of glass during the scene, and he kept going, and the take is actually in the movie. But the reason why it's good for us is we had a movie shot at our school called Killing Winston Jones. You probably don't know the movie's name because the movie never came out. You can look it up on IMDb, but a lot of our friends and everybody was in the movie because they shot it at our school. And one of the producers on the film was actually producing this indie movie. And he was telling us the story about Leo and his hand. And we're like, this guy is lying. This did not happen. They didn't just, go on this thing and he broke his hand and then he was going to rub, blood all over this lady's hand or her face, Kerry Washington's face. But then you watch the movie like, oh, this actually happened. This story's true. And then they start doing press and they start talking about it during Oscar seasons. And we just knew about this like beforehand and we just thought the dude was lying, honestly. But I really love, just hearing from people those stories and then ended up, knowing that it was true. I loved it.
Yeah. So, and what's funny is I think that was probably like the most, known antidote of the 2010s, at least the first part of it, where like if anybody was like, do you have a cool movie antidote, is there something, anytime you watch Django with someone, they would be like, he's actually got the glass in his hand. It's like we know already. It's like everybody knows.
Yeah.
Because if you watch it
Yeah.
with anybody who's seen it before, then and so I just think that's funny. But moving on though, let me ask you this: what really makes this movie like? Is there anything specific about the movie that really makes it great for you? Is there anything why it's one of your favorites? Is there anything you can kind of point to?
let me talk to, so I haven't rewatched the movie since the theater, like, fully. It is a 2 hour, like, 45-ish minute movie. But I mean, I never complain about runtime. There's a lot of people online complaining about
And
runtimes. I will never be that person.
just for
If it's a short
clarification,
movie,
you
yeah.
did watch it the other day. Not that you're talking about a movie you
Yeah.
haven't seen since like whatever.
Yeah, no. I just rewatched it. It's been less than a week since I rewatched it. And ongoing with the podcast, we will always be rewatching the movie before we talk about it, obviously. But with this movie, it's been 11 years since I fully watched the movie. And genuinely, the emotionality of this movie hits so much harder now. I think just growing from being a teenager and now being 27, the emotionality hits so well for me. Meaning, whether it's like the cathartic moments or like the entire love story between Broomhilda and Django, you know, I think there's a few scenes where, Kerry Washington, Broomhilda is just like kind of dreamlike present throughout Django's life. It's very revenge movie, gladiator-esque stuff for me. I eat that stuff up.
I know you do love a love story, even if it's not like the crux of a movie, which
But
arguably it
yeah.
might be. Yeah, no, I think that's. I mean, I think that's all good stuff. I mean, I just honestly like. I think what really has always stuck out to me is that Jamie Foxx is the coolest guy ever in this movie. Like, and I know that's kind of a lame. That's a lame analysis, but he is so freaking cool. Like it's, and I'm not a big superhero movie guy, but he's like a superhero in this movie. Like he comes in, gun blazing. Yeah.
Think about it. I think this might be one of the best superhero movies of the 2010s, honestly.
I think
maybe of this century.
I think
Let's just say this century.
It's elevated past that. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah. But it's like Django becomes for me this like mythical character.
Yes. Well, they say in the movie he's Siegfried. Like that's the whole analogy in the movie. He's Siegfried. Oh, and it's so on the nose. True. It's so on the nose, but it doesn't matter because the way Tarantino sells it in the movie, it works. And so yeah, he is like a mythical character in the way that kind of like the Bride is in Kill Bill, but even I think to a heavier degree,
even more so.
He is the most.
Even more
so.
I
mean, probably the most kind of elevated godlike figure in a Tarantino movie if you think about it. Maybe Jules a little bit in Pulp Fiction, maybe some of Kill Bill, but I think this is his like most.
The mythicality of this movie is just on a whole other level. A modern. He's never done it again.
Yep, it's a modern tale, like a modern fairy tale or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
But it is revisionist history, and this is one of the 3 movies he's done that way. And honestly, I wouldn't say this is my favorite of the 3. It is 2. It ain't 3.
We'll get into that.
Yeah. But like rewatching the movie right now, I found like along with the emotionality, I found myself looking at all of the the African Americans, all the slave characters in the movie, and I'm looking at their reactions, their faces, their perspectives, and Tarantino doesn't necessarily give them dialogue, but he gives them space on screen because he has cast and had these actors who definitely knew what they were doing, and you could feel their souls dropping and being pulled away from them. That scene where the guy during the fighting, he has to kill the other slave. And you can see that these people in the room, they've obviously seen this happen before, but they are not used to it one bit. They're all there just to survive, and no matter what, they're not used to this degradative, dehumanizing activity that's happening right in front of them.
Yeah, I mean, there's a level of brutality in this movie that's actually beyond the brutality that we've seen in other Tarantino movies. If you think about his other movies, they're brutal. Like there's a lot of blood, all that. But, the stuff, the violence you see against, slaves in this movie, and this is done on purpose. I don't think Tarantino does this, willy-nilly. This was intentional. He wants to show this brutality, and he wants to do it in a way to where you're uncomfortable. And usually Tarantino violence makes you uncomfortable because it's very bloody and very violent, but this makes you uncomfortable in a different way, in a way that makes you have to re-examine, a lot of, American history and try to understand what he's saying here.
But what he does within that is he uses that violence in a way where he shapes it to where you see that the violence being enacted it's wrong, it's heinous. Even looking at the great character Christoph Waltz plays, like when they're sitting at the club and he's watching the fight, you can see it within his eyes. His whole soul drops out of him. You see that from Schultz, but you see that from everybody else.
Everybody in the room.
I will say that, all the people that it's like all the violence that you see done to these people, there is a catharsis within that, which is seeing Django kill all of them. And they every single one of the kills is bloody. It's the way that Tarantino does it, but it's only to show the bad people dying, not to show the people who were just innocently, kidnapped and brought to America and made to do the worst, one of the worst atrocities ever done by humans. And yes, of course, it's a very, very, deep issue that roots into the creation of America that we see today. But Tarantino somehow finds comedy within it. He finds emotional moments that aren't just the negative things. He finds the love within it too. And it runs the entire story. That love story runs the entire way. And you're invested within Django finding Broomhilda. And that's the only way the movie works.
He is walking a tightrope here of telling this fairy tale and this very traditional hero story, but also trying to show, these horrific, times in American history and having to not make light of it, but also tell an entertaining movie. And Tarantino might be the only person alive who can do that. Maybe Martin Scorsese too. Those are probably the only two. And they do it in different ways. What we're going to do every episode is we have some categories that we want to go through. And I'm not going to say them all now, but what we're going to do is try to keep this consistency across the movies, because what these categories do is they kind of encourage creative discussion about these movies, and let us talk about specific things that we like, and let us kind of celebrate movies as well. A lot of this podcast is to celebrate movies, to celebrate film, and that's what we're doing here. So the first category that we're going to be talking about is one that is kind of a special interest of mine. Is talking about the Oscars around this movie. So the Oscars is something I'm really engaged in every year. It's something that I find interesting. It's imperfect, and it's not a good...
Yeah, that's the disclaimer to put in there.
It is imperfect.
Incredibly imperfect. They sometimes get it right.
But it's interesting.
They sometimes don't.
Its imperfection is interesting. If it was always right...
Yeah.
And there's no world where it is always right, but if it was always right, it would be very boring. So it's less boring when it's
true. There's juice because it's like it's contentious, or otherwise, it would just be a dull thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would hope that the people who have put in the work, and there's something great about the creative work that they've done that has given everybody a communal reaction that is a positive effect of that art. That should be rewarded, or that artistry should be rewarded.
Okay.
But I can see some issues within, the 2012 Oscars.
Yeah, we can go deeper into the Oscars in general another time, but let's run through this.
But let's talk about for this movie.
Yeah, let's start running through this. So I just want to I got a bunch of notes in front of me, and I'm just going to run through some categories, and we can kind of talk about what happened. So, for Best Picture that year, I guess this is after they expanded into having extra, because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 Best Picture nominees.
Yeah, they have it up to 10.
So
you can have 10 movies.
The winner of this year was Argo, which, to be honest, like it's okay. It's okay. Like I think even at the time it was okay. I don't think anybody.
It's one of the worst. It's one of the worst.
I remember people liked it. It had a high approval rating. It's kind of like, it's one of those things that has a high approval rating but doesn't have a high ceiling. Like it was everybody liked it. Silver Linings Playbook was a lot like that year too, which I'm gonna get to. But okay, so let me tell you some of the movies that Argo won over. Okay, Django Unchained. Okay, Zero Dark 30, which
I love that one.
Still pretty good. Lincoln, which
great. It's still pretty great.
I'm a big fan of.
And I haven't seen. It's the only Spielberg I haven't seen to this day. Or that and BFG.
And there's some others here, like
Les Miserables.
In Life of Pi and Silver Linings Playbook.
That's a good one.
But what I'm saying is, one, not to get too far off topic, but where's The Master? This is the year of The Master. Paul Thomas Anderson's The Master. One of the best films of the 21st century. It's not nominated for Best Picture. They nominated Silver Linings Playbook for Best Picture, but not The Master.
Do you remember Will Robinson? We had a classmate at our high school, our arts high school, who actually told me, I was talking about, I think, Inception or Django or something, and he told me about The Master, and I was like, oh, what's The Master? And then in 2012, I essentially, started the love of being watching PTA's movies and all that sort of stuff. And The Master definitely being left out is an egregious thing where it's like it comes in during the Oscars. There's some Amy Adams was nominated, and the great late Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Oh, we're gonna get to that.
This podcast,
we're gonna get to that.
You must know that Philip Seymour Hoffman. We are stans. We love that man's work. R.I.P. Nothing but love to that man.
But all I wanted to say was I think it's a travesty that The Master wasn't even nominated. Django, you could talk me into Zero Dark 30 or Django winning, or even maybe Lincoln, but
I'm more would honestly. I know you haven't seen it. It's a Haneke movie. Michael Haneke.
Yeah.
It's a foreign
that
film.
Was never gonna win.
I'm glad that it's there. No, true, but it's like the man made a great movie, and it, making movie with like the main characters being someone of an older age, especially a woman, that matters.
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever.
Let's keep moving because there's a bunch of categories I want to go through because there's another one. Okay, so listen to these supporting actors. Okay, these are the noms. So
hit me.
We got Alan Arkin in Argo.
R.I.P.
Robert De Niro in Silver Linings Playbook.
Hey, wait, no. Give me that line read real quick. Say it.
Argo, fuck yourself. That fucking movie. God, it's so stupid.
Y'all have no idea. Like, this man used to say that all the time in when we were in high school. I loved it.
Silver Linings Playbook with Robert De Niro. Whatever. Philip Seymour Hoffman in The Master. Possibly his best role ever. Tommy Lee Jones in Lincoln, which, to be honest, I don't remember a single Tommy Lee Jones scene in that movie. I think he had like 5. Yeah. And then Christoph Waltz, who did win for Django Unchained. Now, here's something that I didn't remember correctly. For some reason, and maybe this was the Emmys or, Golden Globes or whatever.
It was Golden Globes.
I remember Leo and Samuel Jackson being nominated. And when I looked these up, I was shocked because I thought it was all of them were nominated. And no, they just nominated, I guess they just pushed for Waltz. So that was kind of crazy. And to be honest, we'll get into the Waltz's.
Yeah, the Oscars have a lot of politics.
I plan to get into Waltz's performance later. But one thing I want to say is that I think it's a travesty that Philip Seymour Hoffman did not win for this category for his best role as the very charismatic, Scientology-influenced, cult leader. It is one of the best, most engaging performances I've ever seen in my life. And that sucks, especially now that he's gone. That sucks.
I'll second that, except I really love Waltz in this movie. It's also a goated performance, but it's not. I don't think there is nuance to Waltz's performance, but it's not he's given so much to work with Tarantino's script, but the level that Philip was at was something else with The Master.
Would you want to have the Waltz conversation right now? Because I do want to ask.
No.
Okay, we'll come back because I also have a hot take related to him later. So I'm gonna hold that off. Okay, so next, another one I wanted to look at. Original screenplay. The only comment I want to make on that is that this category is consistently the best category at the Oscars every year. The coolest movies go here.
I love.
Let me read you what's
solidarity with WGA. Yeah. Great they got their contract, but these writers, what the writers be doing with adapted screenplay, original screenplays. This category, both categories should be 10 long because there's so much great work being done. I do not care what even Tarantino says about the state of current cinema. There's always great work being done, and for the most part, those writers are being shown up. They show up at the WGA, their awards, and then they show up at the Oscars too. So much love to all these people.
Yeah. So all I want to say is if you're looking back at Oscar history to try to find movies that you want to watch, Look at original screenplay. Don't. It's even better than Best Picture most years.
And that means also look at the ones that were nominated, even if they're nominated, because this year for original screenplay, there's more from Michael Haneke, great. Django Unchained, great. Flight, John Gatton's, solid, really good.
Yeah, really good.
It's not great, but it's really good. Moonrise Kingdom,
awesome,
also really good. Zero Dark 30 from Mark Bowl. Mark Bowl, if you look up his history and the way that he writes a very specific type of movie. And he's also even gone into doing some TV shows, but he does what he does extremely well. I hope to see him and Catherine Bigelow back at some point just making movies.
Okay. So I don't want to waste too much more time on this, Nam, because I could spend all day talking about the Oscars.
True.
I'm going to skip over a couple of these that I noted, and I just want to go straight to the last one we can discuss here is the directing. So before you say anything, let me read the best directors nominated for this year, okay?
Hit me.
Michael Haneke for Amour. I'm going to screw up this name. So Beast of the Southern Wild. Lincoln.
Ben Seitlin.
Yep. Lincoln for Steven Spielberg. Silver Linings Playbook for David O. Russell, and then The Winter of Life of Pi for Ang Lee. So
okay, quick PSA. If you like David O. Russell, go rethink your entire life. Go Google this man. This man literally was feeling up on his niece, his trans niece. The cops got called, and he was acting. He literally told the cops like, "Oh, she was asking for it." This man should not be working in Hollywood. And he works with so many big like actors and all this stuff. It is a shameful thing that this man is still working in Hollywood, especially after like a Me Too era where even the producer of the movie we're talking about is literally behind bars as we speak.
And you know what?
Sorry, I hate
his
that,
movies kind of. His movies suck.
I don't
his
mean
movies
to be
suck
negative.
too. I'll be negative.
I don't want to be negative, but it's
I'll be negative.
How, like these people have this power.
I'll be negative. I don't think David O. Russell's a very good director. I think that he constantly gets big names to make underwhelming projects, and I want to know how the hell Tarantino is not nominated, but David O. Russell is.
David O. Russell just puts great actors in a hot box and then lets them run, and then he cuts it together.
And then the movies suck half the time too. The movies suck when he does that. Yeah. That's the thing.
American Hustle.
American Hustle was the biggest disappointment of my life. Okay, not really, but
I think
it was
if you remember the Key and Peele sketch, with about biscuits and gravy, what's his name, Marshawn Lynch, and they're talking about how the Best Picture is nominated, but Ava DuVernay was not nominated for Selma. It's the same thing here. How is Django nominated, and then the director for Django is not nominated for the film?
It doesn't make sense, especially when it's
this team.
It's a Best Original Screenplay win. Who wrote the screenplay? Quentin Tarantino wrote the screenplay. It doesn't make sense. Whatever. Let's move on because I'm just gonna be mad, and this is supposed to be more of a positive podcast here. So. Vikash, go ahead and announce the next category.
Sure, Zach. We love hearing from everybody about the perspectives they have about the films that we're watching. We will be having guests on the podcast soon enough, but today we have a near and dear individual to both of us. We have Zach's wife, Kat, joining us today. These two are happily married together. Their love is real, and they've been together for I think 9 years now.
Years. I also like that I didn't get to announce my own wife. So, yeah, this is my wife and our producer, Kat.
Yes, I didn't realize I would become the producer, but that just kind of fell into place as I just kind of took on the role.
So this is Kat's corner.
We had a disaster today, but
this is Kat's corner. So we're gonna shut up and we're gonna let Kat give her take
Kat's
on the movie.
Kat's corner. Let it ride.
Yeah.
Give us your thoughts about Django Unchained.
So. First off, I was told to come in hot. Zach said, hey, don't be serious. Come in hot with a hot take. So I had to scrap my whole little bit about how I appreciate the movie and like going to Candyland and the acts are like there's Act 1 and Act 2. And like it's just fantastic all around. I got 10 pages of notes, so don't worry. We can discuss this later if you want. Literally, I took 10 pages.
Kat, go ahead and tell your hot take.
Okay, so I think Django is Tarantino's funniest movie. And like, is that really that hot of a take? I don't think it's that hot. I almost view this movie as a borderline
Pulp
comedy.
Fiction is hilarious. Does he have funnier movies than that? Does he have funnier movies?
Let me workshop your hot take, Kat, because I think you're getting close. I think it's almost
Bro,
boiling hot.
this
So
man, this man's like,
let me workshop this.
perfection.
So the way you should have came in, you should have said, Django Unchained is the funniest Western of all time.
Funniest Western?
Funnier
But what about
than
Blazing
Saddles.
No!
Funny. That's the hot take. That's the hot take.
I love Blazing Saddles. We're not here to discuss Blazing Saddles, Zachary. We cannot
Brooks,
touch Mel
RIP
Brooks here.
for whenever it comes.
I love Mel Brooks. That is no. Listen,
We
I'm
all
gonna make
love
y'all watch a couple Mel Brooks movies, maybe at least one for my birthday. Gotta pick which one.
Spaceballs.
Spaceballs is probably it.
Probably Spaceballs.
Yes,
yeah.
I love Spaceballs. Okay, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about Django. So, okay, I will break
Django.
down how Django is the funniest Tarantino's movie. Because honestly, it truly is. So, this might just be me, but when I first see Schultz with his dentist carriage, I'm always immediately reminded of that one elf from Rudolph. His name's Hermie. And he just really wants to be a dentist. And eventually he gets his own little dentist truck. And he's got the same little bouncy tooth on top, right? I know I just lost people because this is totally like...
You lost me.
I know I
But
lost.
Kat,
I lose you every
I
time
thought you
I
were going to
mention
talk about the horse. Like, the horse is so
I'm
funny and
I'm
cute
getting
in
to
the
the
movie.
horse,
like, all
dude.
the horses,
I'm getting to the horse.
all the horses are good.
The horse is in the next section. So, while talking about the tooth and not the horse, they keep the money in the fucking tooth, guys. The money's up there. They replace it with a bomb eventually, but they keep their money in a tooth. It's like using a freaking shoebox. It's so childish. You know, I know Zach probably doesn't remember, but do you remember that episode of that 70s show where Eric hides his money in Candyland?
What are we doing here? What are we doing here, Kat?
You said Cat's Corner. It's chaos.
Okay. fair
Oh,
enough.
I didn't do my apology for the fact that this is chaos.
I'm cutting this. I'm cutting this now. I'm joking. we can
Editor?
cut this out later.
Listen, I'll restart. But anyway, I'll get to the horses now. Fine. I'll skip all the way down. It's not that far. So, Fritz, that's the horse's name. He gets credit here. He bows every time he's introduced. That's freaking hilarious. And then at the end, I don't know if that's like some random horse Django gets from Candyland, but while the freaking plantation's burning to the ground, he's dancing on the horse.
Oh,
They're prancing around.
Yeah, just swagging up, swagoo
Just
delicious.
hanging
so
out,
the
man.
horse that Jamie is actually riding through the movie is his personal horse that he had for like 4 years.
Really?
And he got to be in the movie, and that's awesome. Like, I didn't know
Fantastic.
that Jamie rode horses in the first place, but the one that he used he literally just brought his horse. I was like, oh, I'm gonna use my horse.
Hey guys, can I ride my horse? I promise it'll be good. It's like if I brought my dog to work, except one of the two would probably
where
be
we
better.
live, they do have horses in the area that you work. So I mean,
Oh, God.
you might as well.
One of them's terrified of horses. The other one hates it, so it wouldn't work. Okay, back to this being funny. So, the comedic amount of blood in almost every shootout with, like, fountains coming out of these bodies is hilarious. I'm not a gore person, so, like, I'm very thankful it doesn't come off as gross vibes. It's just so funny. And then some people are getting shot and they're being flung all around when they're shot. I guess it's only funny to me. But
no, it's
like,
hilarious.
there's other physical comedy too,
they're
right?
wire pulls, and they're not. I mean, the one that happens to Calvin
Yeah.
Candy's like his sister at the end. It makes no sense, but it's like for the emotionality of that moment,
funny.
it is so funny. It is so cathartic. Like, say bye to Miss Candy, and then she just gets yanked across the room. Man,
Dude.
I laugh every time. I see
die
it.
every time Laura gets shot because it's so funny. She just gets flung
And
across
deserved.
the house.
And deserved.
It's too funny. Very deserved. Also, the crowd's delayed reaction when they go to that first town and they shoot the sheriff. The sheriff gets shot, and then the crowd stands there and watches, and then 2 seconds later, that's when they have a response and they start running around. Delayed responses are always funny. And then
Speaking of what you're
let's
talking
see.
about, he's got the visual comedy in the movie is great. That scene
Fantastic.
when he shoots the guy, the sheriff, and he's like, "Oh, go get the marshal
Go
now."
get the
The
marshal,
bartender
yeah.
runs off. It's funny. And then when they get to the club and they're getting escorted upstairs to the fight scene,
Yup.
Django calls out the lawyer, and they do this quick snap zoom when Django calls the white guy an N-word, and it is hilarious. It is hilarious.
I love when they do those little zooms. It always just
We
adds a
definitely
bunch
stole
of
that in high
like
school for
tension,
some
but also it
videos.
kind of makes it funny.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
They're not
Schultz
easy to
has this
do.
little mustache swipe when they go to that first plantation. This is when we first see Django's beautiful, fantastic blue suit. Can we just have a moment of
Don't-
appreciation for this suit?
Don't steal my thunder.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That is the color blue that I wore for my suit for my wedding.
He
I
was
love
inspired.
That blue suit. Yeah, it's not the exact same blue
No,
suit he's
you
wearing, but
you
it's
had
the same.
a slightly darker.
It was the same. It was pretty close to the same color blue, and that was. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. That had to be at least like
a little bit in your brain.
50% of the inspiration for wanting to do a blue suit.
At
Because,
least
dude,
50%.
listen, they kind of make fun of him for it, but I like that is like that's
Girl
like.
says you choose to wear that.
Dude,
Oh my god!
him in that blue suit is like freaking Superman wearing his like super suit,
But
man.
if-
Like that.
if you look
That
at
is
Jamie's
like
face-
his thing. What?
If you look at his face from like before that, and then when he shaves and then he puts on that suit and they
Beautiful,
show
man.
up at the KFC guys ranch to
KFC
find the
guys.
Peruvian guys. What
Yeah.
I mean, Don Johnson's whatever his character's name is, he looks like it's a
Who is he?
KFC
His
guy
name's
role.
Big Daddy, right?
Oh yeah, Big
Yeah, it's
Daddy.
Big Daddy.
How
Big
do you forget a
Daddy.
name like Big Daddy?
Oh, dude. He was trying to tell them how to treat him. Big Daddy's over here like, treat Django like a kind man.
that-
And they're like a white man? And
that's
he
like
goes, no.
Maniacal humor that you would not expect. It's like Tarantino talks about how he's kind of just letting these characters play, and he's just kind of catching up to them and writing these stories. And I really don't know how the man does it. Even Scorsese was a bit envious. Like, I wish I could write scripts like Tarantino. And
It's beautiful.
Yeah, we all do.
Tarantino always uses proper etiquette in his films. I mean, it could just be the fact that he's using Schultz. Oh gosh, what's his name? Waltz, right? That's his name?
Christoph Waltz.
Christoph
Yeah.
Waltz.
Yes.
His character's name is Schultz, yes.
He uses him in Inglourious Bastards as well, first scene, so I'm not even going to go that far. But he's in both movies with proper etiquette, and I feel like it's appreciated in this one. It's almost
Yeah.
comical how he's doing his proper etiquette. He's like folding things, properly placing things, being overly polite, and it's just like to the detriment of others in some instances.
Production value, the most impressive piece of film, shot, scene, moment, whatever it is in this movie, a moment where you feel like everything was left on the field, on the film, in the camera, nothing was left behind. What is that production value moment for you, Zach?
So I wrote down a few of them. I'm not going to go over
Yeah,
all
let's
of
talk
them.
about it. It
Just
doesn't
gonna
have
go
to be
over what-
one. We can go more.
Okay. So one thing I was talking about before, I really think it's a simple shot, but Waltz pouring the beers and them showing him actually pour it and then take the little, I don't know what
Yeah,
it's
the
called,
little
thing
stick.
and knock the foam off.
Yeah.
That's just like A+. Tarantino knows how to work with food and drink, you know, like the strudel and Inglourious Bastards and, you know.
Yeah, the lighting that that Bob Richardson gives on that beer makes it look it's not even like a beer commercial. It feels like it's existing within the same scene, and it just feels so organic to that moment. I understand exactly what you mean.
So another one is it's two scenes back to back. It's when when they're talking about dressing him, you know, before he wears the blue suit, and you
At the
see Django in
haberdashery.
the background. Yep, Django's in the background, Waltz is in the foreground, and
Yeah,
you see
the,
Waltz's
reflection
reflection in
of
the
the,
mirror.
No,
That's
it's like
super
the frame
well framed.
of he's sitting on
Yeah.
a chair, and then there's a like a dresser with a glass thing on the side where they have probably showpieces in the haberdashery, and it's just great framing. And a little bit of insight into how like Tarantino and Bob Richardson work. Tarantino kind of just writes down shots the day of, and then Bob kind of just puts it together. And that seems like an immense amount of work to do, but with something as simple as, you know, just sitting there and doing the dialogue, it's kind of perfectly done.
Yeah. And so this one's my favorite, I decided, because I really thought it was going to be him riding the horse in the blue suit, because I feel like it's just iconographic, you know, it's iconic. But to be honest, that shot of him turning around and looking at the explosion at the very end with the, you know, the goggles on, he's got the hat, he's got the
lit cigarette
cigar,
thing
it's a cigarette, whatever the long,
it's what Calvin
the long
has.
cigarette.
Yeah.
Yeah. But him looking and his face lighting up as the explosion happens, that's my favorite shot of the movie. Yeah, I love it. Fun fact, I'm pretty sure that was my Steam profile avatar for probably like 10 years there, and was my Twitter avatar
you were
for
on
a while
Facebook
too.
memeing with that shot today. You were literally memeing with that shot today at your sister. But
because she was wearing her glasses she was wearing looked like his little sunglasses, and that shot just is something I can't ever stop thinking about. I think it's awesome, and it's right at the end of the movie, and it looks great. So tell me what you got.
One of my favorite shots of the movie is when it's the scene where the KKK members, the bagheads as they're called in the script, thanks to Kat, I didn't know that. The KKK guys, they come and try to ambush Schultz and Django, and they're the ones who end up getting trapped. And as they're running away, Don Johnson's character, Big Daddy, is galloping away on his horse, and they have him on sight with their rifles. And Waltz's character, Schultz, gives the gun over to Django. He's like, hey, he's getting away. Like, here, take this shot. And it's not the shot of him taking the shot. It's the effect shot of just following the horse, where it's like you hear the bullet. The sound design is amazing. And then you hear the bullet hit him, and then the stunt guy falls off the horse, and the shot just keeps going, and it pulls back. It cuts to them, cuts back, and then you just see the horse with all this blood on it, and it's done in a little bit. It's like they slowed it down, and it just felt like poetry in motion to me. That's one of them.
So, fun fact about that scene I found doing some research that I didn't know. Apparently Tarantino was originally going to cut that scene.
What?
And Amy Pascal had to convince him to keep it.
Really? Amy Pascal?
Because
do you know who she is?
Said,
right?
yeah, I know all about her. And she said, she told Tarantino, she's like, this is one of the reasons I wanted to make the film was this scene. Tarantino thought it was kind of like, it wasn't, what's the right word? It was out of context. He felt like the scene just kind of came out of nowhere.
To the narrative.
Yeah.
But it ends up
they
being...
screened it. But he cut it. But then they screened it with the scene and without the scene, and the feedback people gave was that scene was their favorite scene or super funny or whatever the feedback they gave was enough to have Tarantino put it back in.
It's a good thing you bring up the bag scene, because that scene, it perfectly encapsulates how Tarantino shows all of the slave owners and the racists in this movie, that these people are very much doofuses this entire movie, and their entire family is enterprised upon making money off of people dehumanizing other people. They themselves have no bit of knowledge themselves. Literally, Big Daddy's like, oh, $5,000? Oh, let me get in on this deal, even though he's this blatant racist and has all of these people that he's treating as slaves and property. It's very much telling. He doesn't say it outright, but you see every bit of like disgusting, vibes that you get off of a person who ever deemed it right or wrong or right that they should own a person as property. And the scene is played as comedy, and it is funny, but he uses the comedy to like kind of just stab you in the ribs, just very lightly stab you in the ribs, like, oh yeah, like these are racist people too. Whatever. But okay, let me get back to the production value. The scene of Schultz actually tells Django the mythical story of Broomhilda from like the German lore, and Bob Richardson shoots the scene with this glorious orange light from like a fire, but it's just the entire shot is just bathed in orange, and it doesn't seem disingenuous or like overlit or anything like that. It feels mythical. And when you're telling a mythical story like that, that's kind to invest you within a character, especially the love story between Django and Broomhilda, it just makes everything better. Yeah, that's one of them. That's the second one for me. And then there's the shot. My favorite shot of the movie is at 35 minutes and 58 seconds, where Django literally shows up in his swagoo dripping blue suit and saves the woman from getting whipped by the Brittle brothers. And then he shoots, the Brittle brothers. He's like, I like the way you die, boy. Oh man, I love that scene. That shot of like him zooming in, it's like the camera's a little bit lower and the music's swelling. It's just a perfect superhero moment. And it's just like, oh yeah, this is what this movie's about. It's about giving people this sort of character in a time where they weren't able to have this character. And it's like, for me, it's like, yes, like Django existed. Like this man, like that feeling should exist in this world. But yeah, I love that scene.
That's great. So next category we got action is the juice.
Oh yeah, the action is the juice, baby.
And what's the most juice scene of the movie? Can you give a really quick synopsis of what that means?
If you haven't seen Heat, we're not going to explain it because you just need to go watch Heat. We are very big fans of Michael Mann and the movie Heat, but just know that you have to have the juice in your scenes to make it all worth happening. And if you've seen Django, then you know that the scene at the dinner table is one of the most juiciest scenes just put to film in the last 20 years.
Yep, I completely agree with you. I wrote down a lot of other options, and I really don't even want to talk about them because the dinner scene with Leo giving his monologue, while it is not... The action comes later, but that scene itself, you can hear a pin drop, yet has the most juice of any scene in the movie.
The scene itself is a movie where it's like there's certain information being dispersed, and then there's a tonal shift within the scene, and that creates tension. But even before that all happens, just them, sitting there having dinner, talking about buying a human being during dinner is like, oh yeah, like he's not worth 12,000. It's like even just hearing them talk about it put a knot in my stomach.
Well, there's a thriller element to it too.
Oh yeah,
and
then he takes that sort of
the whole is Sam Jackson's figuring it out as they go, and is Candy, is Calvin Candy going to listen to him? Is he going to find out what's going to happen? We don't know.
And the scene, it slowly plays and pulls it back. It's like, oh yeah, Calvin Candy is a heinous criminal, like terrible human being, but he's not the villain of this movie. The villain of this movie is Sam Jackson's Steven, in my opinion.
Because he is the one
he's the smart one
at the end alive. Yeah, no, well, he's the one at the end who's alive, and I'm going to be honest. I haven't really figured out what Tarantino wanted to say with that by having him be the last villain, basically the one that Django leaves to die in the house before it blows up. But
I'll give you my take real quick on that. Yeah, I think it's that he wants to show that, like, at every turn in this movie, he shows that the people who incited this terrible atrocity in history of, putting Africans into slavery and creating this terrible culture, they were not smart people. These people did not have any true sense of integrity or anything like that. And he wanted to show that they were all doofuses in this movie. They were not smart. They were very stupid. And that the person who actually changes the narrative, who makes a shift within the dinner scene, is Steven, is Sam Jackson's character, and he's the actual smart one. And him being an African-American, being a slave who works side by side practically, he's the only one giving lip to Calvin Candy and getting away with it, that he is one of the most despicable characters. Because I can say from my perspective as an Indian that the people who were working hand in hand with the British, the people who were perpetrating this terrible, colonialism on us, these people were the ones who were hurting us the most, rather than, having solidarity within our people and preserving our culture in a special way. It doesn't mean to be, some sort of like nationalist thing or anything like that, but it's about, not being hurt by these people who are coming in to steal and use what we have that is great within our culture and within ourselves as an ethnic group. Okay, but the dinner scene itself, it perpetrates me. It gets into my soul that deeply that I like. It turns into Steven finds out right away. He doesn't even have to ask her properly. He figures out that Broomhilda knows him. He knows that she knows Django, and that they're there for him. That Schultz and Django are there for Broomhilda, and it's not about buying a fight or anything like that. And then we get that shift that you're talking about, right, Zach, with Leo?
Yeah. As essentially you're watching it and you're like, okay, they're gonna get away with it, and then even Sam Jackson isn't convinced that she knows Django at first, but then it becomes more evident, and then you're like, okay, Sam actually gonna be able to get Calvin Candy's ear to be able to tell him about it, and then when he does tell Calvin Candy and he comes back out, you're kind of on the edge of your seat because you don't know what he's gonna do. Is he gonna kill all of them?
When he comes out,
what's he gonna do? And then he does the most, the thing that makes the most sense, which is Tarantino's smart about doing. What makes the most sense? Make him pay all that money for Broomhilda,
But
make him
also
pay the $12,000.
He puts in the stuff about phrenology and how these people, like I said, they're using this backwards, completely illogical pseudoscience that is, there's no basis for it to act as if they have knowledge about how and why people should be subjugated. And he weaves that in so perfectly. And I think one of my favorite parts is when he comes back out and Sam Jackson's character at some point, Steven, he does something to Broomhilda, and we see an insert under the table of Django going for his gun. And I don't think Tarantino does inserts too much, but the insert of him going for his gun cranks up the tension within that scene so perfectly. And
it's just not the first time he's done it. There's multiple scenes in the movie where they specifically cut to Django putting his hand on his revolver, and he never does anything. So by the time you get to the dinner scene, when he does that, you're like, it's Chekhov's gun. Okay. It's going to go off. But then it doesn't. But what's smart, his gun doesn't go off. Whose gun goes off a few minutes later? Waltz's, know?
And I
Christoph
love that.
Waltz, I
love that.
Yeah. And that's when, everything goes to hell after that. But anyways, let's move on to the next category.
The next category is called dialogues. And it's called dialogues not in terms of what we understand it to be in America, but in the Bollywood Indian sense of dialogues. When we talk about a screenplay and the words that are being said between characters in India, they're called dialogues. They show up as dialogues in big, bold letters every time you watch an Indian movie. And it really has this better grip of what are these words that these characters are saying that we're going to remember. Because any language that you watch a movie in, there's always going to be that dialogue that really gets to you. So Zach, what is that dialogue within this movie? Because I know there is so much in this movie.
I kind of want to throw you a curveball, okay?
Do it.
So when I was watching this movie, a very unlikely quote came out to me that was the funniest thing I've heard in an entire movie, and I never paid attention to before.
Wait, what? Okay, tell me.
Yeah. Okay. And it's gonna sound crazy, but here we go. So
okay.
There's a short scene where Schultz and Django go to turn in the bodies at the outhouse, or not outhouse, but the cabin, where the guys there basically to get the bodies from them. Basically, that's all it shows is how they get the bodies, and they turn it. They go and they give the bodies, and he looks at them and he says, "We had a birthday yesterday. Got some cake. Pretty good." And he walks in and just cuts. And the way he delivers that line is so funny to me. It's not iconic. It's not it's not like I got tons of quotes
You know
written
what that
down. Like,
is?
you have my curiosity, now you have my attention. But the way he delivers that line is so funny, so nonchalant. He's the only character I've seen in this movie who is a normal person working a normal job, and he's like, "Yeah, we had some cake. We had a birthday yesterday. We got some cake. Pretty good, But he doesn't say it like it's actually good. He's like, "Yeah, it's
You
pretty
know what
good."
I think it is?
That
I think it's like
that stuck out to me.
We really like this. We're big fans of Christopher Nolan. We like this like almost dry, sardonic humor, and that's very much what that is. And I think it comes from like it branches from us being from the South, and it's kind of a Southern thing to like where it's like people will deliver lines to you in real life where it's like, yeah, it is what it is, that sort of thing, and it's like, yeah, like that's It's just a vibe, right? I understand 100%.
Yeah.
I
Okay, I'm
understand.
glad you understand, because when I wrote it down, I was like, I think that's so is it my favorite line ever of the movie? Probably not, but this time when I was watching it, I was like, I never really paid attention to that line. It's hilarious.
Yeah,
so
I'm
you
gonna
go
have to
ahead.
look
What's
up who
yours?
that actor is. Mine, okay, of course, there's iconic lines in this movie. It's like, oh, it's like, I count 6 shots. I was like, I count two guns, that sort of thing. Or like the D is silent, that scene between Frank Nero, OG Django, and new Django. That's great. But my favorite, though, is the Brittle brother is in the field across the way.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, are you positive it's him? And Django doesn't know the word positive. And within this like simple like exchange, any other movie, they would just, be very quick cut. It's like, oh, is that him? He's like, yeah, that's him. And then they just shoot. But Tarantino puts in the dialogue of like, oh, it's like positive. What does positive mean? Right? And he teaches him the word, like, what is positive? And he's like, oh, it's like he shoots him. And he's like, oh, I'm positive he did. That's my favorite line right there. It's like,
and
I love that.
That's such a Tarantino thing too.
And it's just like it's a great character moment. It's like between two friends.
Yeah.
And and you can tell from like Schultz and Django, there's no latitude of like one person having more power than the other. It's like Schultz is very much of, obviously he's, he was abolition, and he really didn't, he just treated the man with such respect. Like Django never seemed to be someone that he looked down upon, or any of the other slaves. Especially in the opening, this man literally hands his gun and to one of the people that's with Django, one of the slaves that's with Django. And you can see it even within that actor's eyes, like within that character's eyes. I was like, oh yeah, like this white man's kind of crazy. But it's like there's comedy even within that, and there's a character moment within that too, right? I love that.
Yeah. No, that's a great choice. Okay. Next category we got down here. I affectionately call this the Layla, after the needle drop from Goodfellas.
Goodfellas. That's coming. That's gonna be coming one day, right? That's gonna be coming one day on this podcast, right?
But not to spoil, a movie, but it happens around the time. It's the needle drop if you've seen the movie. It's about when they find the pink car.
Yeah.
And you'll know what that is if you've seen it, and it is, I think, the best needle drop I've ever.
Oh, my bad.
I'm
out here just like randomly expecting everybody to watch Goodfellas. Please go watch Goodfellas if you haven't seen it. It's a good movie.
Oh God, I hope so.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is for best needle drop or use of score in a movie. And so I looked at a bunch of these and I was paying attention, and I actually think the intro Django song, when the credits are rolling and they're showing the mountain landscapes,
the OG from the Frank
rocky
Nero movie.
landscapes. Yeah,
Django.
The OG dropping the needle. I think that is actually the best needle drop in the movie.
Django.
Every time that comes on, it makes it feel like a Western,
What do you think about
it kind of tells a bit of a story. Yeah.
I think I already know your take about this, but what do you think about the anachronistic music samples in movies? This one has a few, like 100 Black Coffins from Rick Ross, where it's like this song is not of era, but it's just playing a totally different song from like today's time. It's totally different, anachronistic. What do you think about those? Because
I like the concept of doing that. Watchmen, the Zack Snyder movie, which is controversial, does that, and I think it does it actually pretty well.
Zach likes the Watchmen movie. We both love the Watchmen show better though now, right?
Yeah, and I every time
Yeah.
I watch the Watchmen movie, I like it less, unfortunately. But I really did like it when I first watched it. But no, he does a
Lovecraft
good
Country,
job.
the
He
show,
does
they
that in
did
his
some
movies.
anachronistic stuff well.
I'm not
But
going to comment on 100
all-
Black Coffins because that's in my hot takes. So we'll get to that in a minute.
Okay. But my favorite song
Yeah.
of the movie is it's a tie between it's the ones in the third act, which is Who Did That to You with John Legend, and the mix
yeah.
of James Brown and Tupac when he's, just straight murdering in the Candyland house. Blood's flying everywhere, and you just hear
That's a good one.
Like I remember just hearing James Brown and Tupac mixed together, and it's like, oh yeah, like this scene is like healing souls. That's what it felt like to me. And then the song with John Legend, it's perfectly put to where it's like, oh, it's like this. You feel I love John Legend's music, and it's like, oh yeah, this man's trying to go find his wife, and he's gonna go get her. And it just
Is that the Looking for Freedom one?
It's the song where it's like after Tarantino's terrible cameo. After that, he's on the horse, like going back to the thing.
Oh, that one.
Back to the ranch. I don't know. It's just personal taste. I really love that song.
I also just want to say, even though it's not a needle drop, it's the score, but the trumpets getting real loud as they're coming back from the funeral.
Yeah.
And it starts, the trumpets start just going faster or
The sound
louder
mixing,
and louder.
the sound editing on this movie, all
Yeah,
the effect work
good.
is fantastic. Shout out to everyone who worked on this movie. I think there's some fantastic artists that always work on these movies, and the editing itself this time around, Fred Raskin is the one who started doing it, and Fred Raskin is the guy who edits Guardians of the Galaxy now, and he's doing that plus Tarantino work. I think it's very interesting, the people he's working with.
Okay. Let's move on to the next category.
But all I gotta say is, who should have been in this movie? Who should have been in this movie?
So this is our category where we recast a role. So I only have two for you. And
Okay.
I actually had a hard time because I think Tarantino does a really good job with nailing his casting in his movies, and this one
I would 100% agree, especially with this movie, with all these movies.
And let me say, when I say recast, it's not saying, hey, this person would be better and we think this person was bad in the movie. It's what's an interesting
Casting what if.
sliding doors moment. Yeah, and these aren't real casting what ifs. This is what we came up with. So I had an interesting
like Will
replacement.
Smith.
No, yeah, I'm not doing that. I had an interesting replacement for Waltz. Okay, I think
Ooh, hit me
Ralph
with that.
Fiennes.
Ooh,
I don't know how to say his last name very
Ray
well.
Fiennes.
Is it Ralph Fiennes?
Ray
Fiennes?
Yeah.
I wrote that way wrong on here.
We're talking about Voldemort, Mr. Get Off My Lobby Boy from Grand Budapest.
And the reason I say that, is because in the Grand Budapest Hotel, he does a variation of what Waltz does here.
True,
And I think
that's true.
he'd be more menacing. He'd be a little bit more menacing than Waltz, but he has that same kind of, the way he talks, the formality and the way he speaks.
There's a bit of love with the undertone of what he's doing too, right? With with
he
his
clearly
lobby
can
boy.
he can clearly do German accents. He's been the German in movies before. I think that would have been cool.
We're not going to talk about that movie.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you
Great
one.
movie,
Let me give
but
you one
I
more,
understand.
and then you can do yours. Okay.
Yeah, I ain't got no.
This one, I actually think should have been done. I think you replaced Jonah Hill, and you replaced him with Danny McBride in that scene.
I'm sorry. That, oh my God, I'm sorry. I love Danny McBride. He actually shoots he shoots a lot about an hour away from here, or 2 hours away from here in Charleston. And that dude is hilarious. He should stop making horror movies, but funny dude. And Walter Goggins, who is in this movie, is actually tangentially, they work together on Vice Principals.
Yeah.
But funny that you mentioned
And
Jonah
Uncut
Hill.
Gems.
Yeah.
Uncut Gems too. Yeah.
Funny,
Or not Uncut
you know
Gems.
why?
I'm sorry. Righteous Gemstones. Righteous
Yeah,
Gemstones.
right. Oh, have you started watching Righteous Gemstones? It's a good show, right?
Yeah, I've done the first season. I need
If you've
to watch
seen
more.
it,
Anyways,
if you haven't seen it, go watch it. But for me, recast
do
a role.
your stuff.
I am surprisingly not going to recast a single role because I genuinely do believe that this movie is that well cast. That maybe the lawyer character I might recast, the lawyer that Calvin has. He doesn't seem to pop off the screen to me. I would have put someone with a bit more a bit funnier, I guess, because, a lot of these characters are meant to be, just not intelligent human beings. But since you brought up Jonah Hill, I wanted to tell you that Jonah Hill was actually supposed to be a different character in this movie, but he couldn't do it because of scheduling. And the character that he was supposed to play is the person who bought Broomhilda after the Kurukan plantation, and he was supposed to fall in love with her. But guess who was supposed to have that role too? Instead of Jonah Hill.
Is that the Bruce Dern
No.
Like the cameo? No.
No, that's Kurukan.
Okay.
So after that, she gets bought by somebody else, and then she gets bought by Calvin Candy.
That got cut.
But guess who that Jonah Hill character was actually supposed to be too?
Who?
Sacha Baron Cohen. And he was supposed to fall in love
that
with
would have been
Broomhilda,
good.
right?
Oh, no, that would have been really good.
He had to promote the dictator, so he couldn't go and shoot that character.
The dictator? Oh, no.
And so what ended up happening was he just, they just cut the role out of the movie, and they made some like comics or something for Django, and his character's kind of in there. And also another character,
Cohen would have been so good.
And mentioning Walter Goggins, his character has a bigger role because Kurt Russell couldn't be in the movie. Kurt Russell was supposed to be training the slaves to fight. He was supposed to play a character named Ace Woody, and he would have been, it would have been a villainous role for Kurt, and I think that would have been something great to see from him. But we'll never get to see
this
that.
This would have been a great Kurt Russell movie, huh?
Right?
But Kurt Russell was in Hateful Eight, right?
Yeah.
He was in Hateful Eight. Yeah, so he did eventually get him in one.
Guitars and being badass. Yeah, I love Kurt Russell.
Him and Goggins. Goggins shows up, and Sam Jackson. So that's three of them that show up from this movie.
Hateful Eight is such a great hot box movie. Okay, so hot takes. If you've got any hot takes, let me know what they are, or say them now, or forever hold your peace. Give me a hot take, brother.
There we go. Let me give you the three of them. You can comment after each of them if you want.
Okay.
I tried to narrow it down, but these are good.
I'm gonna exercise some patience.
They're gonna start with being less hot and maybe get more hot. Okay. So, First one, Django is the coolest leading character in a movie in the 21st century, and I'm gonna list off the other contenders. Okay.
Okay.
And you tell me if I'm right.
Okay.
Okay. And first one's from a TV show, but I have to include them.
Okay, of course.
Russ Cole from True Detective.
Yes. Swaggerlicious.
The driver from Drive.
Yes. Just cold demeanor and just yes.
Okay. And I'm saying Django's cooler than all of these. Okay. John Wick.
Y'all. I love John Wick. Like John Wick, Baba Yaga, like Los Petros. That's my man. John Wick is my man. Yes, you're right. You're 100% right. Django's cooler. Okay. Django's 1,000 times cooler.
Tom Cruise in Collateral. I know he's not the lead, but basically.
I mean, Jamie Foxx is cooler than him in that movie too.
Oh, you're right. Good take. I like that.
Yeah.
I Furiosa love and Mad
Great
Max.
Character. Who?
Furiosa and Mad Max.
Oh man. Ooh, that is tempting, man. Yes, you're right. Furiosa is amazing woman, and we're gonna talk about her at some point on this podcast. But no. You're right. Django's Django's even better.
Okay. Jason Bourne.
Jason Bourne ain't got no swag. He just know how to fight.
I agree.
He just lost the sauce.
And then, lastly, the bride from Kill Bill.
Ooh, she was wronged. But she wasn't as wronged as Django was. She wasn't as wronged as Django was, and that's why this movie.
So am I right?
It's like this.
Am
movie
I right?
deals
Is he
with
the coolest?
Some disgusting actions, but it's like the other side of it really is this glorious character. The mythos of Django himself as a character is something else. You're right. I agree.
Okay. Let me give you my second hot take now.
Yeah.
Okay. And this isn't really. This might not be too hot, but I want to see. I think Waltz is actually better in this than in Bastards.
Okay, then let me give you one of my takes.
Okay.
I think that Schultz is the best character that Tarantino has ever written because I think that he, like, compared to every single character in his filmography from start to finish, what we get from Waltz as a character is better than everything else that he's done, in my opinion. Every other character on the board.
Let me think.
I
would say it's Waltz's best role.
It's Waltz's best role, but I think it's
character
for me.
Let me think. So you're saying Best written, is that the qualifier you're using?
Best written. I would like Django has the mythos, but when it comes to Waltz's character, he's a side character, but he's so well written, meaning like he's, concurrently there within the action. And as a white man in this time, in this setting, he was one person that we see this entire movie that doesn't, he stands up when it's right. He's like, I couldn't let this go. And he literally shoots Calvin Candy, and everything else happens because of him. And for better or for worse, he stood up and actually had, the gall. He had the, he had the precision and might within his, his being to be like, yes, this is wrong and I'm done with this. I can't take any more of this. And that sort of like feeling that you have within a revenge movie is something that it's very hard to cultivate. And the culmination of that within, the dinner scene and then the scene right after it is perfect.
I can't think of anybody to argue with you against. Like he's up there with all the best written Tarantino characters. John Travolta and Pulp.
Which is true. It's
Hans
like
Landa,
he's got a lot of great characters, but it's like none of them was like, oh, like that's me. Like that would be me. Like I wouldn't take this crap. I wouldn't just sit by and let this keep happening. Like especially if it's happening like this, and the intercutting that they do between, D'Artagnan and bringing up Alexandre Dumas, genius thing from Tarantino. Because, I mean, if you know literature, and he brings it up in the movie that Alexandre Dumas was a French man, but he was, he was a black man. Okay, give me your next take. Give me the next take, the hot one.
Okay, let me give you my last one. Let me give my last one. This one's going to piss you off, okay?
Okay. Guys, get ready for me to get mad.
100 Black Coffins by Rick Ross is horrible. It was horrible.
You're right.
It
You're
is. Right.
What?
You're agreeing?
But. Oh. See, I like it. It makes no sense in this movie, but there's something.
No.
There's something of like an artistic flourish.
Okay.
No. I love the song. I do like it. I think it's great. But I understand if someone doesn't like it. It's like, the verse on King's Dead from Future where he's like la di da di da, and he's at a really high tempo. This song literally won a Grammy, and I think it's something where I can respect the artistry that a person puts into it, and they're pushing the art in a weird way that, yes, it doesn't make sense, but it's just kind of cool, and the vibe is right. But yeah, I understand what you mean. But I love Rick Ross, man.
I have nothing against Rick Ross. He's made other good songs. It's just that's not one. Okay, give me whatever else you got for the hot takes.
Okay, you already heard my main one, which was about Schultz. The one off screen, the only other hot take I had was that this is $100 million movie with a black lead set in a very, a movie that can be seen as being a very like race-filled movie, right? And to say that any person of color would have gotten this same budget to make this same movie, I think you'd be lying. I think of anybody.
I don't think
like
that's a hot
Ryan
take.
Coogler got the budget for Black Panther. Ava DuVernay, she did the Wrinkle in Time. You can talk about a few other directors of color. The Marvels literally is coming out today, like this weekend. Nia DaCosta's, she made a $125 million movie, but I don't think that they would have ever given this movie to a person of color, especially of African American origin, to make this movie. And
probably not.
And that
how
being
much
said,
did they give Harder They Fall?
This movie still somehow ends up being a movie that people of color loved. Like African Americans definitely showed up and watched this movie. And it's like Tarantino did his thing, and that brings such love and catharsis and emotionality to this story, which I didn't really think that I didn't think Tarantino could do it before. But seeing this and seeing Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I think it's a different part of Tarantino that we didn't see before within him. And I think it's a side of him where it's like the man believes in love somehow, and he pushes a love story, whether it's in this it is quite literally a love story of man and wife, but in Once Upon a Time it's just we're observing this time within his vision and why he fell in love with it at that age, 1969 in Hollywood. But yeah, it's a bit of a hot take as to like, yes, it would like this movie would have never been made by a person of color, and it would have been fundamentally different. But also the way that it exists right now is the reason why it was so successful too at the same time, because this movie at $100 million budget made $426 million, which is a very successful movie. And I think that led the way for him to do Hateful Eight and Once Upon a Time and whatever crap he makes for his last movie.
Yeah, I just looked it up. Harder They Fall. Which,
Harder They Fall.
You can correct me if I'm wrong. That was a black director, right?
Yes, J.S. Samuels.
Okay.
He's making a new movie called
but
The Book of Something. It's got Lakeith.
Yeah,
our man Lakeith. But
I
no.
The
thing though, I think that there's like a sliver of tone that exists between Harder They Fall and Django, but the DNA is not the same. It's like there's there's some splices, like epigenetic similarities that are there, but it's not the same.
I was just looking up your criteria: black led, black directed, Western, and they got a $90 million budget from Netflix.
For Harder They Fall, bro, you have to watch Harder They Fall.
That's a lot more than you think. I did. I watched it.
You did?
I watched it. It's fine. It's fine. Yeah, I watched it.
That movie was great.
It's fine.
I love that movie, man.
It's hard to watch that because I've seen Django and it's
but see, that's the thing. I don't know. When I watch a movie, I yes, there's like there's a voice in the back of my head that's always talking, about details and this and that. But I try to turn that off, and it's just like, let me enjoy what I'm watching, and then I'll assess it later. I try to assess it later. Sometimes you can't. It just it comes blatantly similar, but I didn't really feel that with Harder They Fall, especially with the amount of people of color in that movie. Whether it's like Jonathan Majors, the amazing Delroy Lindo, who should have had an Oscar win or an Oscar nomination for Defy Bloods. We will get to that later on this podcast. Go watch that movie too. Spike Lee, big ups to the man. Even Spike Lee as an artist, he was like, yeah, I don't know about Django. Even he had his big contentions with this movie. So what would be the companion movie for you for this film? It could be a brother movie, a sister movie, where it's like there's parts of the DNA within this movie that is similar to another movie. So it's like, if you like this movie, you should watch this movie too.
I'll give you two. Okay,
hit me.
One, I think Blazing Saddles is a good companion movie in terms of.
That's true.
I think that the humor in that movie, you actually can see some of Tarantino pull some of that same humor. Maybe not as directly. That one's more fourth wall and meta, but it still pulls some of that. But also, I actually think Collateral is the perfect companion movie for this.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Bro, is this because we watched Collateral this year?
I've
seen Collateral so many times.
Yes and no.
Yeah.
So, I mean, besides the fact they both have Jamie Foxx, they do have, really cool lead, really cool leads, who are great characters. It's about revenge, in some way, anyways.
Yeah, but I understand. I understand.
Highly stylized. I'm not saying they're the same movie. I'm saying that they're good movies to watch back to back.
Yeah. For me, Harder They Fall is a good mention to have. It's on Netflix. It's got an amazing cast, from Regina Hall to Lakeith Stanfield to Idris Elba. So many great faces of color in front and behind the camera. Shot by the guy who shot The Master, actually, Zach. But besides that, my like perfect film to watch with this is RRR from SS Rajamouli from 2022. SS even has Django Unchained on his it's like Sight and Sound magazine. They distribute the 5 movies that like a director loves, their favorite 5 movies of all time. And one of those 5 movies is Django Unchained. And if you watch those 2 movies back to back, you can see what he was trying to do. Just from my, my perspective as an Indian American, you feel not exactly the same, but it's like you feel that sort of same pain and then catharsis within the same movie, where it's like they're trying to show what the atrocities were being done to our people, and then us trying to, get back at the people that are committing said atrocities to us in a way that is, formful of, brotherhood, which is, that sort the same, the co-leads in RRR have this almost improved relationship of what Schultz and Django have in this movie. Though I will say, they are charismatic, but they don't have, the poppiness maybe of, of Schultz or Django, but they are amazing on screen. And I would wholeheartedly tell people to go watch RR, because what SS is doing, Tollywood, whatever his family's doing, it's something amazing to behold. And that movie, like, just thinking about it makes me cry sometimes. I'm not even gonna lie. Sometimes I just cry, man. I don't know if you know 21 Savage, but I just cry.
I think that's a great choice, and I'm not surprised you picked that, because I know what that movie means to you. Let's go ahead and go to our last category here, the MVP. Vikash, who's the MVP of the movie for you?
For me, when Katie talks about it, it's like, you the MVP, mom, like the person who I think put the team on their back, and this movie doesn't exist in this form without them. For me, at least, I think the person who doesn't get their credit for that role is Jamie Foxx. Because
Amen.
For me, I don't yes, he's Django, but I feel like they always say that if you have a main character, the juicier character of the movie is always going to be the supporting character. Any movie, like, okay, The Dark Knight, right? Batman is the main character, but it's Joker who steals the entire movie away from him, right? And with this, I think Jamie has to play the lead role, but I think every time we see him, I think the way that he acts with his eyes from the start of the movie, where we see him on the chain gang, and you see his eyes are just wide and it's like 1,000-yard stare, and then we see him being slowly humanized again and brought into being this hero in his own story and being given authority within himself that he deserves as a human being. Like, you can see all of that acting being done in Jamie's eyes at every single step of the way. And it just feels, and plus his chemistry with Schultz, his chemistry with Waltz and Broomhilda is something to behold. And I love Jamie in this movie, man.
Yeah. It probably took into my third or fourth viewing of the movie to realize that Jamie really carries the movie and is actually the most important role and character.
Sir.
And
yes, sir.
Watching it this time, I noticed too, Jamie doesn't get a lot to do for the first probably fourth of the movie. Waltz really has to carry it, and that's because of what the script calls for. But
it's like
once they get
all those moments,
once he puts on his blue suit, it changes. He starts to take over. He starts to have more of a role.
It's like y'all like y'all treat this man like he's nothing, but this man is like, he's a hero. And I one of my favorite shots of the movies is actually it's like a copy shot of when they're on the chain gang, and when Django gets called up, and he just like he flips the blanket that he has on, he just like flings it off like a hero, like with some swag. And then the other slaves on the chain gang, they do the same thing, and it's like there's this authority, this just as a human being, that you should feel value within who you are and what you do. And the simplest thing can do that and give value to a person. And behind the camera, in front of the camera with Jamie, you feel these decisions being made, and the acting just comes through perfectly for that, between action and cut. So what's yours? Who's the MVP?
No, that's my MVP,
bro.
You took it from me.
Yes.
Yeah, we're in complete agreement, and I'm glad you went that way with it, because like you said, he's the all-time believable badass in the movie, and the whole film doesn't work if you don't think he could be such a cold motherfucker.
I'm just glad that he has an Oscar. Was he nominated for this movie?
No, he wasn't.
He wasn't
and
nominated
we
for
didn't get
lead?
to that, but that is a travesty. Okay, you know what? Not going to take too long, but I'm going to go back and tell you who was nominated, because
here I got it. For best actor, they had nominated. Who is it? Let's see. Bradley Cooper. Nope. I think he's amazing in his own movie. What is it? A Star Is Born. I think he went so far with that. Hugh Jackman in
Yeah.
Les Miserables, he's done better work. I thought he should have deserved it for Prisoners, right?
Yep.
Joaquin for The Master, deserved.
Deserved.
Denzel deserved, but I think he's done better too. You can't even talk bad about Denzel. Denzel's a
Yeah,
goat.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah. But Django should have been there. He was more relevant, and I feel like he's still relevant.
Daniel Day-Lewis won for Lincoln.
I feel like in this context of Lincoln just freed the slaves in the South. Right? Just the man didn't really do much. Okay, it's like there was so much to do after the Emancipation Proclamation and the 13th Amendment and everything. I recommend watching 13th. It's on YouTube and Netflix. Directed by Ava DuVernay. Very much worth the watch. Very enlightening documentary that will change your life.
Yeah, it is. It's a good cast of actors actually there, like that for the noms.
Yeah,
but him not
but
getting nominated was a
I think-
travesty. And
I
I
think
think it's
there's a
just
beauty-
because you don't figure out that he's the main guy for
How
until a couple
Chadwick,
rewatches.
how Chadwick had to exist as Black Panther in Black Panther, and Michael B. Jordan kind of has a lot of sauce in that movie, right? But the way that Chadwick carries himself as as the leader of Wakanda, as a brother, as a son, everything that he does and rebels and leads at the same time. I think that's this. It reminds me of that. There's this beauty to having a great lead, and that can create such a mythical, being or world. It matters.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have any final thoughts on the movie?
It's always going to be with this podcast is we're going to talk about movies that we love and we have this intense love for. And I think I understand if someone doesn't like this movie or they don't want to watch this movie. I think there's a reason why I haven't watched it fully through again. But it's this movie is also a part of my DNA, quite literally. I will never forget watching this movie for the first time and the effect that it has on me ever since. It's been something that will always exist within me. And anytime I hear a song from this movie, I get transported back and I feel this energy of catharsis about this movie. It's I love what Django was able to do, and he got back to his love. He was able to right some of the wrongs that are being perpetrated at that time, and it's a great tale to have that exists. This world is, I think it's lesser without Django Unchained existing in this world. What do you think?
Yeah. I think that this is the movie that sold me on Tarantino, because I think it was the second one that I saw. And when I saw Inglourious Bastards, I was a little younger and I didn't really understand it. So this is the movie that sold me on him and made me go backwards and watch his other movies and become a huge fan of him. And it's all because of the unique way he has of telling these stories, this historical rage that he has in this modern Tarantino universe where he, Inglourious Bastards, Hateful Eight to some degree, but Once Upon a Time in Hollywood,
revisionist history,
Django, where it is Tarantino is showing his anger at how things went in history by rewriting it. And he's showing what should have happened and what he thinks should have happened. And it's his way of trying to make, to understand what happened and make right with it. I don't have time to psychoanalyze Tarantino, but
I think
that's,
for me,
I really like this late period where he does this.
All this stuff being said, it's we're more than aware of, his flaws as a human being and all that sort of stuff and the people he's worked with. But I think the way forward, I think this movie is always going to stand the test of time. But at some point, there's going to be a change where it's there's going to be a person of color who makes these sorts of movies and is, just as good of a writer, if not better, that is going to bring characters to life that feel this great to me. And I think it's happening now with certain directors, but I think the way forward is it's bright. And I think this movie is always going to be a lesson, whether it's like a lesson of what to do or it's a lesson of what not to do. Someone's gonna be inspired to do, like, hey, I can do this better. And I think that's the great, the great moment of epiphany that a person can have is like, oh, let me go and try to do this. And it's like Django Unchained is one of those movies like, dang, this is cinema as great as it gets. But I mean, someone can do something like this, then let me go do this too. So that's our podcast episode for this week. That's Django Unchained. I hope that you enjoyed listening to this episode. We want to thank Cole Cooper for the great intro and outro music. I was jamming to it a little too much when I first heard it, and I hope that everyone else does too. Next time, we will be talking about Denis Villeneuve's amazing 2016 film, Arrival, starring the amazing Amy Adams. I hope that you come back and listen, subscribe, like, share this podcast. And the most of all, I just want to have conversations about this film and every other film that we talk about. I'm always more than available to talk to people about these movies, and I think there's always a substantive conversation to be had. Even if me and you don't agree on anything about this movie, I think it's always great to hear people's perspectives, no matter what they are. You can find me, Vikash, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. You can find me Letterboxd. You can find me everywhere. TikTok, Instagram. That's Oshkosh Vikash. We'll have that linked. You can find me on Letterboxd. It's Merry, Merry 722. I talk too much on Letterboxd too. I go pros with it, and I have the short ones. I love all the little like 5-word of whatever reviews on Letterboxd. Zach, where can they find you online?
They can find me on Twitter/X at Nadel96.
Twitter. We call it Twitter.
And they can find me on Letterboxd also as Nadel96. I keep it simple.
Perfect. I'm the one who I was using. You can find me on Reddit at Mary722 too. I don't use it, but I used to be on Reddit talking about movies, and I think having a podcast is going to be a much more substantive outlet to be talking about films. So that was our episode this week. I hope that everyone has a lovely day wherever you are in this world. Lead with love, and I hope you have a nice day. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.